Thank you for taking the time to watch this episode of Life Support. If you enjoy the content, we would ask that you like it, hit subscribe, and share it with your friends. Hey, I'm so glad you joined us on Life Support, and we're talking about a subject that fits right into kind of our wheelhouse here. We talk about topics that aren't often discussed on Christian media. We talk about things that the world has conjured up that really hurt people. But we know that Jesus is the Redeemer. He's the one who will come back and make everything right. Until then, it's the local church. It's the Church of Jesus Christ that is out there trying to make a difference. And one man who's doing that so well is Michael Bartel of Free International. And thanks for being back. Appreciate it so much.
Thank you, Pastor. Appreciate it.
I've got a million questions for you, but I want you, if you wouldn't mind, just give us a recap of what exactly Free International is and what your mission is.
Yeah, so Free International is a missions organization. We work hand in hand with the church, capital C, as well as local churches around the country to find, restore, embrace, and empower those who are being exploited through modern day slavery and human trafficking. Really believe the church is a centerpiece to everything God's trying to do in this world. It is his chosen agency to reach the world, small and great alike, whether that's a boardroom in the middle of Minneapolis there or a legal brothel in Nevada. God has left us here, his church, to reach into those areas of this world so that none would perish. And so Free International's focus is on the vulnerable and the trafficked and the exploited and the missing. But we do it hand in hand, missions, church, partnerships, reaching the vulnerable and the exploited.
You gave some statistics when we visited before about how many kids are being trafficked in our country, and it was a pretty staggering number. Are my kids safe?
Yeah, so, I get that question a lot, and it's an awesome question. I'm a father myself. One of the things we have learned, and again, this to me is such an incredibly important, one of the reasons the church is so important in this world is, I believe kids are safe as they are connected to strong family environments and local churches. Community is everything in creating kind of youth that are Teflon to the predators out there. The predators are out there, very, 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 very few of the pimps and the people out there we would worry about, just use violence or abductions or kidnapping. Those exist, but they're the rarest of the rare. Most predators that are kind of working to exploit our youth and our young ladies and women use other means, right? They use boyfriending techniques. They look for vulnerability and then they go to exploit it, right? And so when we have churches that are really invested in our families, building stronger family units, and invested in our youth and strengthening them, not only are they Teflon and largely protected, obviously we need to teach them situational awareness and other things like that, on the day-to-day. We all need to know that. But the lies of the enemy, let's say it that way, fall on deaf ears when there's strong, healthy family and community life that they're surrounded by. And so I think your kids are safe. And I think the church has a great opportunity ahead to really impact our cities as we strengthen our families and build stronger communities and stronger youth, because our youth are on the front lines of this every day. So we don't want our kids just protected. We want our kids to be able to be the front line, to be able to reach those who are being targeted and are vulnerable and are in family environments that aren't healthy and create that vulnerability.
This might sound like an obvious question, but I can hear somebody saying or thinking, hey man, I've got a lot of problems already. I mean, I'm trying to keep my kids safe from this gender stuff in school. I'm trying to keep my marriage together. The cost of living's gone through the roof. I'm trying to be pure. What? Why are you bothering me about these people who are being trafficked on the other side of the world? Why should I care as a Christian? What would you say?
Well, I guess the pastor in me or the Christian in me, I look to Philippians, right? Philippians, uh, Paul tells us we are to carry the same attitude that Christ Jesus had, who did not demand or cling to his rights as God, but left that status, that glory, that place he had in heaven to dwell with us so that we might be in relationship with him. We see it through the life of Christ. I mean, that first missionary leaves the glory of heaven to dwell with us and become like us so that he might reach us and call us his children. Or even just sitting around the table with his disciples. It says Jesus knew he had all authority and all power. So he grabbed a towel and a basin and he washed feet. I think the very nature and character of God, if we're going to be, if we're creatures created in God's image, which we are, and he is recreating us through him saving us and restoring us on the day to day, that we become like him. Our lives are important. We need to be taking care of our families. We need to be in great fellowship and brotherhood and sisterhood in our churches. But we also were left here for a purpose, and it's the same purpose he came to us for, which is to pursue the reality that he wishes none should perish, and that his gospel and his love would go forth into this world. So I know everybody's life's crazy. I know nothing's getting easier in this world. I know resources aren't where they used to be. I know not every issue can be everyone's issue, but what I do know is as we are present in our communities, we see this stuff, this vulnerability, these things playing out around us. We are mandated by God through his love to be present in the lives of those who need him. And that includes the traffic.
Yeah, of course, I agree with you. I think sometimes the church just needs a wake-up call because we can be awful insular. We can be very much looking inside. And we want people to come to know Christ. We want to disciple them. But what do you say to people who separate the gospel from social justice, or get uncomfortable that you call yourself a missions agency, but your number one goal isn't to pass out tracts in Africa somewhere?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, to me, it's an awesome question too. And to me, a lot of this deals with the process of it all, right? I mean, a lot of the girls we're reaching out to in context actually have a predator monitoring their steps. They have a lot going on that if we approached in a simplistic way like that, we would put them in more harm or more danger than if we took the long ball approach. We want to show the love of Christ in every situation, open handed. These young ladies' choices are their own. However, we also know that what does it profit if we gain the whole world and lose our soul in the process? If we approach only with a social justice approach, then I wouldn't think we are a missions organization, but I don't think you can separate those things. When people are being actively exploited, when the foundation of even their humanity has been taken from them, you start with them where you can. We are not trusted because everyone they've ever trusted has exploited them. So we have to earn a place of trust in their lives to move that down the field a little further. Let me say this: one of the girls we rescued a few years back at one of our big searches. We were working with her social worker. Social worker showed us her file. We have MOUs, and it was all good that we could be doing this. And this young lady, she was 17 years old, but her file started when she was less than 2 weeks old. Her mom tried to sell her at a laundromat, and for her whole 17 years of her life, She had been, her file was just full of being prostituted, of rape, of incest, of all this stuff. And that's all she's known her whole life. So she has never breathed a trauma-free day in her existence. So when we approach as people of Christ, as missionaries, we have to take that longer approach into this. I believe God can heal, and I've seen him heal. I've seen healings in front of my eyes. I haven't seen that take place really as often in this world, but what I think God is doing, in my opinion, is not only is he using us as the church to reach these young ladies and boys and families who are being exploited for the gospel, but he's also using these harder stories to transform the church, to understand what is needed to truly love somebody forward in their new walk with Christ. And so I don't think you can separate. That it really is simple to embrace Jesus and have him in your life. That doesn't remove the complication of these girls' lives, which is, has been nothing but trauma for all of their life. So we have to be embedded for the long haul in all these areas.
And that, of course, is heartbreaking to even think about. But let's look at the life of our Lord Jesus Christ. We sometimes, I think, underestimate this pushback against the people that he hung out with and that he ministered to, this radical rabbi who wasn't going to play by the rules, because the rules of the Pharisees, the religious leaders, weren't important to him. It was the people that mattered to him. And I think of, the woman at the well as an obvious example. You've had many husbands. So what does that mean? You're living with one now who's not your husband. I mean, she could have been a woman who was being trafficked. She could have been a prostitute that was being used by somebody else. Certainly an outcast, at the very least, middle of the day, nobody else out there, nobody allowed to be near her except for the King of the universe. And there he was. And he just led her, bad pun, but he led her to the water. He led her right along. And what happened then? Well, she ran joyfully back to the village. And then what happened? A mass conversion of some kind happened. And so that act of just caring had huge ramifications. And I think that's what you're saying is like, hey, we are carrying the banner of Christ. But first, we need to minister to the people, right?
That's right. Yeah, the gospel is never absent from our language, or maybe even more importantly, who we are, right? The reason we do what we do, because Christ did what he did for us. And that is a story that these girls need to hear, and we tell them. However, if the pimp is across the street watching, we can't stand there with the track in our hand, because when she gets back on the other side of the street, she's going to be beaten up. There's a lot of bad things that will happen to her. And so her whole life has been crafted around that reality. And so it takes that longer period of time. And even like you said, I mean, in a similar way as the woman at the well, I mean, part of the issue there was she was an outcast because she was damaged goods. I mean, back then, divorces, things like that, really overwhelmingly pretty much ruined your life if you were a woman, right? You were done. You were a beggar. You were a prostitute. Those were the things that happened if in these broken relationships. And so, same with these young ladies. I mean, a lot of them have criminal records, but it's of no fault of their own, right? They were forced to do things, and then they took the brunt of what was forced on them rather than the person who was making them do that. There's a lot of complication in this. I've even had to learn that over my life. When we lived in India, one of the greatest churches I've ever been in was right on the edge of the red light district, and every Friday night we'd have service with these young ladies, knowing, and they were worshiping God. They were raising their hands and singing to him. And we knew when that service was done, they still were going into that district, not because they wanted to, but because that was the life that was pushed on them. And so it took a lot of added work on our part and the churches we worked with part to get them out of that, because they did not want to be there, but the choice was not in their hands. And so to me, that's where a lot of this social justice push, I mean, I know that term's got some loaded political leanings anymore to it, but we have to be able to provide more than just that moment on a Friday night on the edge of the red light district. We have to work on their behalf to get them out of that environment, maybe get that environment completely shut down, and provide some real world opportunities for them that they can embrace and gain value in what they're doing, not be exploited through what they're doing.
I just have you for a very short time. And as we're talking, I pastor a church that's out here in the suburbs, feels very disconnected from red light districts. And, this is a wealthy part of the Twin Cities. Nothing wrong with being in the wealthy part of the Twin Cities. But how does a believer that's living in the suburbs, that attends a church like this one, how do we help? Because we just seem so disconnected from this.
Well, we work with churches all over the country. There are a lot of different, just spiritual and philosophical as well as pragmatic ways to be engaged as a community of faith. We just worked with a church in the suburbs there in Minneapolis, who helped us search, hosted, those efforts, and, are looking to learn more so they can be more present in the need throughout the city, even beyond just the suburbs. Being to me, awareness is important only if your awareness helps engage an issue, right? Otherwise, it just becomes trivia information. And so, but being aware and more present with the people around us, like I said before, we want to empower our kids and our families to be stronger families, and we want our church to be a bright light into the brokenness of that city. And so, I think what you've even been talking about today as a leader of this church, obviously, there's going to be an understanding or a growing understanding of what the scripture tells the church. What does it mean to be present in our city, in our state, in our country's time of need? What does presence look like toward the vulnerable and the exploited? We work with a lot of churches in Vegas. We have weekly rentals all over the city. Just a ton of people live in this pay by the week, little pseudo hotel rooms. By the thousands, they live there, thousands and thousands. And so one of the ways we really began to make an impact with the churches there is we would, once, twice a month, bring in the grill and start flipping burgers and play with the kids and hear people's stories and pray for them, and just be present in the middle of their need. Not everyone in these weeklies were being exploited, but a lot of ladies that we were able to get out of trafficking were in these weeklies, and it was our presence that built trust. And once they built trust, they were willing to tell us their story. And when they told us their story, we were able to get them help. So finding ways to be present where more vulnerability is, even if it's as simple as flipping pancakes, on Saturdays in the morning for the kids who might be undernourished, right? Might be, because there's vulnerability there. And so there are a lot of different ways, obviously through prayer. We don't wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers. And I think prayer is powerful. Prayer is so needed, as we're addressing the, current struggles in this world. Sure. So a lot of different ways, and we'd be happy to walk with you guys as well through that education and finding areas of your own neighborhoods that could use a brighter presence of the gospel in that community.
How can I find out more about Free International?
Free International's website is freeinternational.org. And then we're all over social media. You can Google Free International. and we pretty much pop up first wherever that is, unless you're looking for, free international phone calls or something that'll filter in there somewhere. But we're if you keep up with us, we have missions trips that teams of people come down to work with us in Las Vegas or around our big searches in different cities that we work in. So there's a real opportunity to gain an education, as well as, in the middle of the cold winter of Minnesota, come down and work in Las Vegas for a few days, and we can even help even more walk you through what it is we're seeing and how that might translate into real work in your own city as well.
Well, you better be careful, because there's Minnesotans on the phone right now making their reservation.
Come on down.
Yeah. Michael Bartel, appreciate your time so much. Keep up the great work. I love your heart, and I know God's using you guys in a mighty way. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pastor.